Previously, Shai Massoud advises our undercover reporter on how to set up a pro-Israel movement in Britain.
And that's it. That's the way you establish organization.
Tensions remain high after a dispute over anti-Semitism at the Labour conference.
I saw Jackie Walker on Saturday and thought, you know what, I can take her. She's like 5'2" and tiny.
Whoa. Oh my gosh. Well, that says it all.
In part 3 of The Lobby, our undercover finds himself at the center of a scandal as he secretly records events described by the media as anti-Semitic acts. For the first time, the other side of the story. Following decades of violence, a new challenge has emerged to Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands, called BDS.
BDS is here to stay!
That's the global movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel and expose it as an apartheid state. The Israeli government has responded with a campaign to rebrand the country's image.
The reason we should fight BDS is because it's wrong. It's a moral outrage.
It's an operation run by the secretive Ministry of Strategic Affairs.
They recruit mainly former intelligence officers. Its main task is to counter BDS worldwide.
Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit exposes Israel's clandestine activities in London, a city that's become a major battleground.
BDS campaign in many ways germinated in Britain.
You'll meet the people working to challenge BDS at every level of British politics.
Israeli embassy.
Ah, okay, nice to meet you.
We work really closely together, but a lot of it's behind the scenes.
One of Israel's main targets is the Labour Party. For the first time, its leader is a champion of Palestinian civil rights.
They'd be very happy to see Jeremy Corbyn no longer leader of the Labour Party, for sure.
It's a covert action that penetrates the heart of Britain's democracy.
Can I give you some MPs that you suggest that you would take down?
It is outrageous interference in British politics. It shouldn't be permitted.
It's a battle of ideas seeking to change not only how Israel's portrayed, but even how it is debated.
It's anti-Semitic. No, it's not. It's a trend.
The Labour Party is holding its annual conference in Liverpool. For the first time, the leader of a major British party is an outspoken critic of Israel. The Israeli embassy has sent its senior diplomats to canvass opinion. Our undercover reporter attends a private meeting of sympathetic labor activists. The ambassador, Mark Regev, tells them what to expect.
Some of the people here are more Palestinian than the Palestinians. And the fashion is, if you are on the left today, you are probably very hostile to Israel. If not anti-Semitic. I think when you...
Ambassador Regev suggests a message that should be delivered to other Labour Party members.
It's why are people who consider themselves progressive in Britain supporting reactionaries like Hamas and Hezbollah? We've got to say, in the language, I think, of social democracy, these people are misogynistic, they are homophobic, right? They are racist, they are anti-Semitic, they are reactionary. I think that's what we need to say. It's an important message.
Jeremy Newmark, the chairman of the Jewish labor movement, reveals how the message worked with a close ally of Jeremy Corbyn.
Just to get Clive Lewis as one of Corbyn's key lieutenants onto an openly Zionist JLM platform took a lot of heavy lifting.
Clive Lewis, MP for Norwich South. Look, it's a real pleasure to have been invited here tonight. I've known Jeremy for over 20 years, since my time working with the Jewish...
Lewis's decision to condemn anti-Semitism at a JLM event was viewed as a tactical victory for the faction inside Labour that opposes Jeremy Corbyn. Corbyn is the party's first openly pro-Palestinian leader. The faction that supports him is called Momentum.
We already have actually intelligence that from the Momentum political directors meeting last night, they passed a vote of censure in Clive Lewis just for coming to our meeting in Sweden.
At the time, Jackie Walker was Momentum's vice chair. She believes that reports of a crisis of anti-Semitism were a consequence of the same ruthless party infighting.
Some of us would say it was mostly a constructed crisis for political ends. I would say, there is a crisis of the way that anti-Semitism is being manipulated and being used by certain parts of not just the Labour Party, but other parties and the media to discredit Jeremy Corbyn and a number of his supporters. I mean, let's disagree politically. I'm anti-Zionist, they are pro-Zionist. Let's have that argument. Let's have that argument, not this that's going on at the moment, no.
Everything is wheels within wheels, you know? It's created a bit of division within momentum.
The day before, I had a debate with Jeremy Newmark. At one point, he turned his back on the audience and whispered to me, "You're a court Jew." Now, anybody who is Jewish understands what that means. If you were being abused as a black person in the same way, you would be being called a house nigger.
Did you report it to anyone in the party?
I told my partner and I told some friends that had happened. It's very hard to use a system which is so discredited, which the compliance unit is.
Shai Massoud, whose job at the embassy includes liaising with pro-Israel groups in Britain, ends the meeting with a summary of his achievements.
The numbers, this year we did more than 50 events in the campuses of the universities of the embassy. There are more than 100 events that happen by the Israeli societies, by themselves, that they arrange in the campuses. And in addition to that, we did more than, I think, 8 receptions for young people in the embassy, including 3 receptions of 300 people that came, from the parliament.
I will take a picture. Yeah.
Should I take a picture of it?
Yeah, you can take.
Cheese.
Back at the LFI stall, Shai and the Israeli delegation continued debating whether to wear the pro-Israel T-shirts.
Shai has a dream. Shai has a dream. I'm going to make it come true today. He wants me to put on the T-shirt. But as Robin is my witness, I was going to put on that T-shirt today. And
I have a dream that an activist will not be ashamed of what he's representing.
I'm not ashamed of what I'm representing. It's a T-shirt, and it's
such a huge message.
It's a genuine question. If you say...
One party member was attending her first conference.
I heard there was a Labour Friends of Israel stall, and I thought this would be a really good opportunity to have a dialogue with a group I know who have a lot of influence, and it'd be very interesting to hear their ideas. So I found where their stall was.
Can I just ask you, you're very anti the settlements. What is Labour Friends of Israel doing about that? They are really...
We make our view clear, and we meet with people at all levels in Israeli politics and diplomatic circles, etc. And we make it absolutely clear we're not friends of Israel, enemies of Palestine. Hence our new campaign launching next month and that we're showcasing here. We believe in a two-state solution in coexistence and self-determination for both people, and that's really...
How will that come about, do you think?
Well, our job is to support any possible means that can bring it about.
So
what are we supporting is coexistence project, which is what this is about.
I had no idea, quite honestly, who was behind the stall. There was a woman behind the stall. My first series of questions from memory was simply to say I was very interested to know how a two-state solution would come about. What would be the details, not a slogan, but the details.
Would you like Israeli occupation?
Well, what we want is a two-state solution. And the reason we've not got it now at the moment is because there's a distinct lack of security for Israel.
Supporters of a two-state solution believe that a peace deal based on national boundaries that existed in 1967, before Israel's occupation, will one day lead to a viable Palestinian state. But the continued growth of Israeli settlements on occupied land has made an independent state all but impossible.
If you look at a map of the West Bank and East Jerusalem today, you are looking at a fragmented territory that Israel has colonized now for almost half a century. Practically speaking, a two-state solution is just not possible under these conditions.
I was actually seeking some reassurance that a two-state solution, if that's what they were promoting, was still possible.
This is a big picture situation, and we want a two-state solution that is good for all.
Times, what steps? Because, you know, so the Labour Party is saying...
I'm not going to defend or criticise
it. It seems as if you are defending Israel.
I would defend Israel. I'd defend Israel's right to exist. I'd defend Israel as a democracy and a social
sense. We don't suffer.
I think we have to be very, very careful not to let our feelings about this morph.
So no feelings come into account. I'm not being anti-Zionist.
We have to be very careful, don't we all want a two-state solution based on coexistence and peace?
I said time and again, I'm here to talk about the two-state solution which you are promoting. And this is what I'd like to learn about.
It's clear that the Israeli state, no matter which party is in power, has got absolutely no desire or inclination to relinquish the territories occupied after 1967. But the questions that that throws up are the kinds of questions that people don't want to ask or don't want to answer.
I'm asking you how. So you are bringing your effort, and we make I don't know what I think.
Anyone who supports Israel has to ask himself or herself the following question. There are two possible scenarios, and only two possible scenarios. Either I support the new state of Israel, which is an ethnic apartheid state, or I support a change of regime in Israel, namely that the state and the country as a whole would go through a genuine process of democratization, as did apartheid South Africa. There is no third option.
Thank you, Jean. I've enjoyed the conversation.
I'm asking you about settlements. They've totally atomised the whole of the West Bank. I'm asking you, I'm really genuinely interested, how is two-state solution, how can it come about if the whole of the West Bank is atomised? So, but in practical terms,
that's what you're doing.
But I'm asking, in terms of the West Bank is atomised, where will the state be? I mean, that's a genuine question. Where will the state be?
The activist who came to ask her tough questions about the settlements, actually, that was her main point. She didn't ask her about Judaism or the existence of Israel. She just wanted a straight answer. How does anyone who supports Israel justify the settlements?
We go over there, we witness, but nothing changes.
I was quite interested in whatever funds they had and influence they had, how would this bring about a two-state solution? That was my very basic question.
You've got a lot of money, you've got a lot of prestige in the world.
I don't know where you get that from. Sorry? Labour friends to Israel got a lot of power, money.
Well, I think so. I hear that it's a stepping stone to good jobs. A friend of mine's son's got a really good job at Oxford University on the basis of having worked for Labour Friends of Israel.
If you just believe rumours,
then it's not a rumour, it's a fact.
It's anti-Semitic.
No, it's not anti-Semitic.
It's a trend. It's about conspiracy theories.
It's not.
Sorry, it is.
It's not.
Anyway, that's my view, and I think we have to agree to differ.
No, I don't think we do have to agree to differ.
I'm agreeing to differ. I'm ending the conversation because I am not really wishing to engage in a conversation that talks about get involved with this and then you get a good job in Oxford or the city or that is anti-Semitic. Sorry.
But do you think that...
Joan Ryan falsely claimed that Jean referred to jobs in the city, London's financial centre.
And it comes very clearly in the discussions that you have filmed that the woman was not anti-Semitic. They know it. She didn't talk like an anti-Semitic person. She was a typical pro-Palestinian person who was worried about the violations of the Palestinian human and civil rights.
Ryan continued to reference banking, a traditional anti-Semitic trope, as she left the conference hall with our undercover reporter. But Jean had never mentioned it.
Anti-Semitic, you heard her say, join you lot and you get into Oxford or you get into work in the bank. Anti-Semitic.
At no point did I ever say that Labour Friends of Israel will get people jobs in banking in the city. I did say, which is absolutely true, that I know the son of a friend of mine who he believed himself that having some connection with Labour Friends of Israel didn't harm his career at all.
That evening, at a rally to combat anti-Semitism organized by the Jewish labor movement, Joan Ryan described her day at the stall.
But we have also had 3 incidents of anti-Semitic harassment on our stand to the people who are staffing that stall today. And that, I think, tells you something about why we need to be having this Against Anti-Semitism rally.
By the following day, word had spread about Jean's exchange at the LFI stall. Several MPs came by and expressed concern, including Jeremy Corbyn's former challenger, Angela Eagle.
I think we had a couple of problems yesterday, but today's been better, where we did have one person towards the end of the day come and say the anti-Semitism is just being used to crush Jeremy, and that the allegations are sort of made up to a certain extent, which is obviously awful, but compared with stuff yesterday, it's sort of not that as bad. Some of that sort of stuff is now becoming normalised. Sort of less shocked about that than I was about that happened yesterday. I know, tell me about it. How are you anyway? You okay?
I'm absolutely loving it.
As well as Jean's case, other alleged incidents of anti-Semitism involve the attempt to replace the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Another prominent Corbyn opponent arrives at the stall and hugs Jennifer Gerber, the director of the LFI. Labour MP Shuka Umana asks for an update on the anti-Semitic incidents.
What exactly happened?
Oh, God, yeah. Actually,
one data came up and basically said Raku was run by Jews, Jewish MPs and Jewish millionaires. And Andrew Eagle's husband is
he's Jewish.
No, you can make it up with you. We reported it.
And so that was incident 1. What were the other 2?
Joan, Joan dealt with the other instance.
Right.
The other instance yesterday.
I reported that incident, that woman. She took a video of me then. Joan Ryan, Labour Friends of Israel,
I'm not sure
working away while answering questions.
Sorry.
They didn't show any of the bits where I said, you're being anti-Semitic, don't you?
That's obviously come to an end.
So I made a formal complaint.
I am very shocked about the way she described my words to other people. I feel very anxious and that she should be misinterpreting me totally to other people. I find that very, very worrying.
But I mean, I wrote down, all this what she was saying about the being rich and powerful, the one who went to Oxford, and the next minute he's got a big job in banking, and I said that, classic anti-Semitic.
I have no idea how she got from A to Z, going from my comment, which was what it was, to then saying he got a big job in banking. Maybe she believes her own trope, if that's the word they use.
We had a woman saying, no, I've never seen anti-Semitism. My Jewish friends have. We said, well, it is real. Is it real? Is it really real? It's just being used to crush Corbyn. And I said, there's a bit, as a Jew, would you say that to any other, I've experienced homophobia, but I don't deny it. But anyway, it's only a few, I guess. That's the way it's out.
people have been positive. We signed up lots of people.
Yeah, do you know what? Most people have been positive and nice. It's kind of like solidarity. People are coming up like solidarity. Solidarity, guys. Are you okay? How's your day?
It's disgraceful. We'll prevail. Yes. We'll prevail in the end.
I like that.
Definitely. It's in a way pathetic, but it's also worrying how such a pathetic evidence can, and we know, can be used to intimidate Jeremy Corbyn into establishing an inquiry commission, in making daily confessions that he's not anti-Semitic, and so on.
That is, I think, going to be the defining narrative, actually, now, which is anti-Semitism. And do you know what? That denies, what I found, I said to her, you heard me a couple of times saying, I find that upsetting that as a Jew, you're telling me, and she didn't give up.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's, if an anti-Semite comes up, if somebody says to me, Jews, they're all big noses and control the world. I'm like, wow, but you're an anti-Semite, that's terrible. Someone like her worries me more, because is she an anti-Semite? I don't know. But she basically denies the fact that it exists. She just thinks it's made up. And
the group discusses which act of alleged anti-Semitism was worse. Reuben believes that Jean's discussion with Joan Ryan was amongst the most serious.
I know. It's just the stuff yesterday was like explicit anti-Semitism.
Difficult Moments woman who told us that anti-Semitism, is being concocted to crush Corbyn. That is what she said. And I think people, if we're not getting it out there.
Yeah.
But is that anti-Semitic, guys? I don't know,
That's the guy. I don't know where my line is anymore. I think it's different to yesterday.
I think if it makes you feel uncomfortable, I think that's the point at which you call it out and report it. And that's why Joan convinced me to report the one yesterday, because I was made to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And although nothing anti-Semitic was said, I'm sure there were undertones of it, and it was brought upon by that context.
I thought Labour Friends of Israel were talking about Palestine because they were promoting a two-state solution. Now I find they don't want to talk about Palestine. And if you do talk about Palestine, it would appear you're kind of sucked into having an accusation of anti-Semitism brought against you.
At the end of the day, if you feel offended by it and uncomfortable for it, this should be a safe space, and anything that breaks that should be reported, I think. There is that line, obviously.
So they're really scratching the bottom of the barrel to make a list of 2.5 cases of anti-Semitism. 2 out of the 3, they themselves are not totally sure that they fall into their own strict definition of anti-Semitism.
Jean was unaware that her exchange with Joan Ryan had made national news and that a complaint of anti-Semitism was lodged.
I felt overwhelmed by being at the conference. I had no idea there would be so many things to go to, so many interesting workshops to go to, seminars at the same time as people speaking in the main hall. My husband hadn't been very well, so we actually left a day early.
Shortly after, Joan Ryan's assistant emailed Robin asking him to be a witness to Jean's alleged act of anti-Semitism.
I kind of feel it was an anti-Semitic, trope against Israel and Jews controlling and having power and money. I thought I think, although she didn't say Jews and she said Israel, it's definitely on the line. Do you know what I mean? Because if she had said the word Zionist, I would have said 100%, 100%.
Despite being unsure of what he had witnessed, Richardson had no qualms about the expulsion of a fellow Labour Party member.
How it works is, you make the complaint to the Labour Party within their own rules will decide. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect this woman might be potentially banned, but she did say something that was anti-Semitic.
After Jean had left the conference, she was contacted by a Labour Party investigator. He would only say that it was about a serious incident.
I was thinking, had I seen a fire take place? Had I seen someone throw a bottle? Had I seen a fight break out? I was really racking my brains thinking, what incident had I seen? Was I aware of? Was I a witness to something? And almost by return came an email that it was my conduct that was being investigated. I was totally shocked. That was like a real bombshell.
In part 4, the senior political officer at the Israeli embassy wants a private word with our undercover reporter.
I wanted to speak with you. We have to do it actually over a coffee, but yeah, just let's do it on the way to the event.
Okay, whatever you feel like.
There seems to be a problem.
I can give you an idea, but you need to approach them independently. Do you understand?
And when does lobbying become espionage?
Can I give you some MPs that you suggest that you will take down?
Well, you know, if you look hard enough, I'm sure that there is something that they're trying to hide.
It strikes me that this is the sort of job which the intelligence services should do, to have a good look at what's going on.
Previously, Britain's Labour Party is having its annual conference.
People are coming up like solidarity.
In a surprise move, the Israeli embassy's senior political officer introduces our undercover reporter as the chairman of a new spin-off group, the Young Labour Friends of Israel.
He's Young LFI, Chairman.
Okay, must have been it.
Oh, you're heading up the Young LFI?
Yeah, he's awesome guy.
A visitor to the LFI stall is caught up in a row over anti-Semitism.
Thank you, Jean. I didn't know. I'm asking you about settlement safety.
In this final episode of The Lobby, Shai Massoud's activities paint a troubling picture. Few foreign embassies in London are this engaged in Britain's democratic process. And at what point does it cross a line? Following decades of violence, a new challenge has emerged to Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands, called BDS.
BDS is here to stay.
That's the global movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel and expose it as an apartheid state. The Israeli government has responded with a campaign to rebrand the country's image.
The reason we should fight BDS is because it's wrong. It's a moral outrage.
It's an operation run by the secretive Ministry of Strategic Affairs.
They recruit mainly former intelligence officers. Its main task is to counter BDS worldwide.
Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit exposes Israel's clandestine activities in London, a city that's become a major battleground.
BDS campaign in many ways germinated in Britain.
You'll meet the people working to challenge BDS at every level of British politics.
Ah, okay, nice to meet you. We work really closely together, but like a lot of it's behind the scenes.
One of Israel's main targets is the Labour Party. For the first time, its leader is a champion of Palestinian civil rights.
They'd be very happy to see Jeremy Corbyn no longer leader of the Labour Party, for sure.
It's a covert action that penetrates the heart of Britain's democracy.
Can I give you some MPs that you suggest that you will take down?
It is outrageous interference in British politics. It shouldn't be permitted.
It's a battle of ideas seeking to change not only how Israel's portrayed, but even how it is debated.
It's anti-Semitic.
No, it's not anti-Semitic.
It's a trend.
The annual conference of Britain's opposition Labour Party is continuing in Liverpool in the north of England. The gathering is important for Israel because for the first time, the party leader is a supporter of the BDS movement. Robin, our undercover reporter, has been with members of the Labour Friends of Israel. Shai Massoud had conceived a plan to attract young pro-Israel Britons to the Labour Party, what he called the Young LFI. He promoted Robin as their chairman. Now it seems the Young LFI is about to become operational.
Shai's basically in said he very empty out a bit of money, which is good. It's happened to help funding up from events, so it's amazing. So I don't punish it, really. It's just getting organised off the ground now, really.
By now, our undercover reporter had become a trusted confidant of the Israeli embassy's senior political officer. But suddenly, he wants a private word.
Yeah, I wanted to speak with you. We have to do it actually over a coffee, but yeah, just let's do it on the way to the event.
It appears that something has changed.
When I was drunk or whatever, I introduced you like as working with Young LFI. But actually, it's not an official position yet.
Shai had earlier introduced our undercover reporter as the new chairman of the Young LFI.
It was an idea. It's an idea that I cannot implement because I am not a young Labour Friends of Israel or young British guy. It's not relevant to me at all. I am an official. I can give you an idea and I can help you with everything, but I'm not relevant to you at all. Just, you know, I'm a tool for you to help you if you want to do it.
Yeah, sure.
If you decided to get the idea.
So you don't coordinate too much with them, or?
I'm coordinating a lot of things with them, but I'm not their boss. My position is that if you need help with, you know, to connect it to the groups, to bring it to the places, I can do that. But you cannot be affiliated with me, and you cannot, like, use me as someone that said something.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not relevant. I'm not relevant to anything. I'm just working in the embassy.
On the following day, Haaretz newspaper reported on a leaked cable from the Israeli embassy in London. The memo accused an Israeli government ministry, Strategic Affairs, of operating British Jewish organizations in a way that could put them in violation of British law.
The Ministry of Strategic Affairs may use local groups, which are entitled as British civilians to counter BDS. They may be in touch with them, they may instruct them, they may support them, but they would be very, very careful not to violate, as a state, the laws and the sovereignty of other nations.
You cannot say, yeah, Shai said it's fine that I will volunteer to you, because I'm not the one who, you know, taking the decisions to LFI.
Okay. I'm sorry if I brought you into trouble.
No, I'm totally fine.
Okay, good.
It's just important that, you know, that's clear. I'm not. So if I'm giving you like an ideas, it's like in friendly ideas. It's in a friend way. It's off the record. It's not something that you can use.
So, but there's, I mean,
if you feel like you like the idea, so you got an idea from a friend to do in the LFI, it's fine that I will be that friend, but in the bottom line, it's not like that I have a say in that idea.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Do you get it? That's politics.
If you were trying to fool the British people by setting up a front organization which masquerades or says that it's genuine Friends of Israel, but actually is run from Tel Aviv, that's troubling. Just imagine if there's a great big sort of apparently spontaneous pro-Iranian organization in Britain and it turned out that it was run from Tehran or inspired by Tehran. That would be outrageous.
The annual event run by the Labour Friends of Israel was one of the most anticipated at the conference. The party leader always attends. The LFI chairperson kicked off proceedings.
We must campaign flat out against the BDS movement and all those who seek to demonise the state of Israel. To single out uniquely the world's only Jewish state and call for it to be boycotted, that is anti-Semitic, and we should say so loudly.
It's very surprising that people suddenly were talking about fundamental issues of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party once a certain person was elected as the leader.
Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn.
That's the only reason people were looking for anti-Semitism. And you know, if you look for something, you will always find it, whether it exists or it doesn't exist.
And I want to thank Joan Ryan, as chair of LFI, for the work that she's done and the way that she represents the organisation.
The sudden onset of anti-Semitic claims led Jeremy Corbyn to publicly engage with Labour's pro-Israeli groups.
I say this, the Labour Party is not a home for anti-Semitism in any form. I do not intend to allow it to be. We've produced a report to deal with that. We'll continue proposing in any way.
Kind of live with that for the time being. Yeah. Get us through another year.
In the past, Israel has grown used to unchallenged support from across the British political establishment. That cross-party consensus allowed Israel a free hand, enabling it to build illegal settlements on Palestinian lands.
I'm sure many people are pleased to hear your commitment to the two-state solution and your commitment to fight anti-Semitism wherever it appears, in our party or in the wider society.
In private, Israel has another message. Corbyn and the global BDS movement that he supports threatens the political status quo that has tolerated Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands for half a century.
Corbyn is a leader. One of the things that he doesn't understand or he doesn't get is that at the moment that you get the leadership, you need to drop all of the weirdos, extremists. It's good that they were your campaigners. You cannot build a government from extremists, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to stay with all of those weirdos.
Back at her London home, the woman who confronted Joan Ryan over the construction of Jewish-only settlements had received a message. She had become the subject of a formal Labour Party investigation.
The following allegation has been brought against you regarding your conduct at the Labour Party conference 2016.
Thank you, Jane. I've enjoyed the conversation.
I'm asking you about settlements they've told.
When the lady, who I now subsequently learned was Miss Ryan, accused me, the allegations was that I was being anti-Semitic, I was just appalled.
Totally atomised the whole of the West Bank. I'm asking you, I'm really genuinely interested, how a two-state solution...
The complaint alleged that Jean constantly suggested that the LFI had lots of money and power, when in fact she had said once the LFI has money and prestige. Nor did Jean mention a high-paying job.
As a concluding paragraph, his summary says, the above incidents and allegations levelled at me left the complainants feeling victimised, intimidated, and both felt the incident contained what they both described as incidents of anti-Semitism.
I reported that incident.
Have you?
That woman. I made formal complaints.
After several weeks, the investigation cleared her name.
That they should be the ones to feel victimised and intimidated from a member of the public, a member of the Labour Party, approaching a stall where they're purporting to give information and presumably wanting to discuss the two-state solution. I just find that almost, laughable, if it weren't so affecting of me. I know now that it can absolutely impact on people's lives. I am just a regular citizen who is concerned about what is happening in the Middle East, and not to be able to talk about that without being accused of being anti-Semitic, I find deeply worrying. I think that is quite shameful.
Back at the Israeli embassy in London, Shai Massoud remained keen to find a role for Robin. He invited our undercover reporter to meet an experienced parliamentary operator, Maria Strazzolo.
You must have arrived 1 second after me.
Oh, yeah.
Both were on time for their meeting. As they waited for Shai to emerge from the embassy, it turns out that Strazzolo has met two of Shai's superiors in Israel.
The one time I was late, actually she's Shai's boss. I met her in Jerusalem when I was there in the summer. The one time I was late, she was on time. Last year, I met her with her boss a couple of times with my then boss because they wanted to discuss things like, problems with the UK government. I used to work for an MP, a minister, really. Yeah.
Who's that?
Yeah. Robert Halfon.
Halfon?
Yes.
The British civil servant began to educate our undercover reporter on how the Israel lobby works inside Parliament, and especially the Conservative Party.
How many of the MPs from your party are in CFI?
Oh, pretty much all of them. When there is the annual lunch, which is just before Christmas. Basically, the whips almost always make sure the lifeboats come after the CFI lunch because it's like all the parties there.
Whips are party loyalists who ensure MPs turn up whenever they are needed to vote.
And the PM.
And the PM, and the Chancellor, and the Foreign Secretary, and everyone.
When we're talking about the construction of British policy towards the Middle East, towards the Palestinians, towards the Israelis, you can't describe that without taking into account the fact that the Israeli government has a very powerful ally in the shape of the conservative Friends of Israel, and that they do brilliant job at getting the Israeli point of view across.
The parliamentary officer described the ease with which the CFI's information was accepted by MPs.
If at least you can get a small group of MPs that you can always rely on when there is something coming to Parliament. And you brief them, you say, you don't have to do anything, we're going to give you the speech, we're going to give you all the information, we're going to do everything for you. Then I think it becomes easier. And from that little group, it might grow and grow and grow. So if you prepare everything for them, it's harder for them to say, oh no, I don't have time. You know, so if they already have the question to table for it's hard to say, oh no, I won't do it.
Strazzolo boasted about how her efforts once made an immediate impact on the national debate.
I was in Israel with CFI when they had found the 3 kids that had been kidnapped in 2013. And I was on the phone with Rob convincing to table a question for Prime Minister question time for paying tribute, and also tabling an urgent question to get a statement from the government on the 3 kids.
Mr. Robert Halfon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The world has seen the tragic and brutal murders of 3 Israeli youngsters, most probably by Hamas. Will my honourable friend give the Israeli government every possible support at this time? And does he not agree with me that far from showing restraint, Israel must do everything possible to take out Hamas terrorist networks? And will he give the Israeli government support in this?
I think it's very important that Britain will stand with Israel as it seeks to bring to justice those who are responsible.
By now, the senior political officer at the Israeli embassy had become a trusted confidant of our undercover reporter.
It's quite funky.
Yeah, I like it. Oh, this is...
Yeah, I'd rather go for this one,
Shai invited Robin to attend a meeting organized in part by the City Friends of Israel, a group he earlier said that he was establishing.
It looks like you got along with the Israelis. You have to
great team.
Israelis. Where can we get along? Yeah, that's amazing how you do that.
Hello, sir. Thank you very much.
Maria Strazzolo was also there. Discussion turned to Donald Trump.
So he's an unpredictable person. The only thing that you know you can, I mean, from Israel's perspective of view, you can think that he's like steady in his area is the fact that his daughter is a Jewish. She converted to Judaism.
The meeting had been coordinated with AIPAC, the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, perhaps Washington's most powerful lobby group. It is not widely known that AIPAC has a presence in London.
As a European and somebody who lives in the Western world and enjoys its individual freedoms, I also view, and I hope most of you do as well, I view Israel as the battleground where modernity and Western values meet the forces that want to destroy that way of life.
Focus campaign.
Joe Richards from AIPAC's Wall Street division summed up their operations.
Today, we're a pretty robust organization where we have one single mission, which is to make sure that the United States and Israel remain very close together in the relationship in many different ways. And the way we do that is by relationship building with our 535 members of Congress, 100 in the Senate, 435 in the House.
AIPAC's guests explain to Robin their interest in Britain.
The real strategic goal is to get the UK to behave more like the US than Europe when it comes to Israel. And to kind of pull them, tug them into the US sphere.
By this point, Robin was well aware of the Israeli diplomats' close ties with America's pro-Israel lobby.
I went to AIPAC last year because I organized the British delegation to AIPAC. So it was me and the British donors. There is like around 30, 40 from each country. I was sponsoring the CFI Conservative as well, some of the Labour as well. And we all went together to AIPAC. But in the bottom line, we have a donor meeting with the head of strategy in AIPAC, and he met us basically to teach us, give us some ideas to Britain.
Shai then announced another audacious plan involving a front company set up by the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, whose mandate is to fight BDS.
So the Strategic Affairs, they asked me, they are establishing a new company, a new private company that basically will work for the Israeli government. It's like kind of outside company, whatever.
The Ministry of Strategic Affairs has called it a secret war, potentially involving what this prominent Israeli reporter described as dirty tricks.
When I say dirty tricks, they can smear people, activists, BDS activists or others. They can hack their emails in order to collect information about what they are up to. They can, trash people.
It's going to be an office of 20 people, so the position that they suggested to me to do is to be the liaison for the international communities around the world. So it's good sometimes, because it's good to work with AIPAC and the others, the organization, the FISM, it's good. It's good. And the last position that I applied for, that there is a slight chance I will get it, actually, is to be the head of the Foreign Affairs Department of the Intelligence Department in Israel. I'm not a career diplomat. I am political posting, so I came just for one position to assist in political issues that specific. Sometimes you need someone to take care just of them, to be focused on them. So that's what I do.
At ease and with the trust of his dinner companions, Shai floated the idea of a parliamentary plot.
Can I give you some MPs that I suggest that you will take down?
Well, if you look hard enough, I'm sure that there is something that we're trying to hide.
Yeah, I have some MPs.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. No, she knows which MP they want to ask the question.
Yeah, it's good to remind me.
The Deputy Foreign Minister.
This exchange between the political officer of the Israeli embassy and a parliamentary staffer about taking down, is the phrase used, Alan Duncan, is outrageous. It's shocking. This is clearly a deliberate attempt by a foreign government to interfere in the workings of British democracy and to secure the destruction of the career of a minister in the British government.
We recognized Israel in 1950 when they didn't have any clear borders, they didn't have a capital city, and now it's high time to do the same for Palestine.
It doesn't matter.
You still want to know?
No, he's doing a lot of programs.
I thought we had
like a conspiracy.
neutralized him a little bit, no?
Boris? He basically good. Yeah, he just don't care. He's busy with other issues. Boris is busy, He is an idiot, but so far he became the Minister of Foreign Affairs without any kind of responsibility. So technically, if something will happen, it won't be his fault.
The parliamentary officer then recalled how Sir Alan Duncan had once confronted her boss, the MP Robert Halfin.
Rob was writing articles, giving interviews, doing everything, asking questions in Parliament about the terrorist salaries.
When he was
terrorist salaries. Yeah, and after a while, Rob was doing a lot of it. While I'm pretty sad, took him, like, I don't remember exactly when it was, but he took him on the side and threatened him and said, if you don't stop this, I'm going to ruin you, I'm going to destroy you, and all of that. And Rob told the whips, and the whips just told him to calm down.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, never say never.
Never say never. Yeah, but what about the...
You can't tell anyone from looking.
Who would they tell?
I certainly think that she needs to explain what she was doing. We want to know whether any further steps were taken towards getting rid of, taking out Mr. Duncan. I think we need to know a lot more about the background to this, what else was going on to damage the Foreign Office Minister. It strikes me that this is the sort of job which the intelligence services should do, to have a good look at what's going on.
Britain's domestic spy agency, MI5, includes in its definition of espionage seeking to influence decision makers and opinion formers to benefit the interests of a foreign power.